so powerful.
They can't be recreated ever. It was all outboard and console.
Man, you've gotten to do some fun shit.
Yeah, that was maybe one of the high points for sure.
Musicians React.
Hello and welcome back to Professional Musicians React.
Today we're going to listen to M83, Midnight City, and we are in the Record Factory, which used to be known as the Record Plant.
In Sausalito, where a bunch of insane records were made. Sly and the Family Stone, Rumors, a bunch of shit was recorded here. It's an amazing place. We're here with M83 producer Justin Meldal-Johnsen. This is Justin Meldal-Johnsen. He's currently playing bass and MDing for St. Vincent. He's played in Beck's band since the beginning. He also plays with Nine Inch Nails, Air, Bird and the Bee, in addition to producing bands like M83, Paramore, Wolf Alice, and many more. We're going to dive into this track. Here we go. Let's take a listen.
I love that. So powerful.
That's such a cool track, man. There's so much cool shit happening in there. How long ago did this happen?
It was recorded in 2010 and came out in 11, I think, on the Hurry Up We're Dreaming LP.
Nice. Okay. Yeah. 10 years ago. Wow.
Yeah.
Still sounds so fresh. Maybe we should go back in time to the first time we met. 12 years ago, there was a young child, a 23-year-old kid, who he was touring in a band called Define Frenzy, and the tour manager was a guy named Chris Fahey. And this kid loved Bird and the Bee. Loved Bird and the Bee. You turned me on to Bird and the Bee. And Chris Fahey was tour managing Bird and the Bee, and they were playing a show at Hollywood Bowl, and I wanted to go. And Chris said, well, do you want a tech? Like, I can't get you in, but if you want a tech, you can be like a tech, and you can go to the show. I was like, great. And so I went, and this guy, Justin, you were playing bass, and I was your bass tech. And I had just, you were awesome and very cool. And I had just gotten the gig playing bass with Ben Folds, and I didn't own a bass. I had no gear. Like, I was a guitar player, and I lied and said I played bass. And so I took, you don't know this, but I took pictures of your pedal board. I took pictures of your entire rig because you were so cool, man. You look so cool playing the bass too. And I just loved everything you were doing. And I literally copied your pedal board.
Did you get a perm?
I didn't get a perm. I couldn't afford it at the time. But I copied like your Aguilar rig, like the same. You had like a 410 cab with a 12 on top and an AG 500 head.
Okay.
And I copied everything to a T because I had no idea what I was doing.
Wow.
And that's the first time we met.
Wow. That's a lot. That's a lot.
Yeah. Sorry to ambush you.
So what do you think of that, Justin?
it's like amazingly flattering.
Anyways.
So many questions. Actually, one question before we even get into synths. One thing about this track that I think is emblematic of the times. This was like right when the world was starting to, I don't know, I feel like from 2010 to 2020, people just went super electro. It just got very like electro pop became like the thing that like every pop song started sounding like electronic music. In particular, there was the ducking of the bass under the kick drum and the ducking of the synths under the kick drum. Mm-hmm. And if this was recorded in 2010, that's like just at the beginning of when I know ducking's been around for a long time, but it wasn't like mainstream. Like ducking was like something that Europeans did until like 2010 or 2011. And then it made its way into like top 40 American pop music. This was at the very beginning of that pumping sound where the mix is going up and down underneath the kick. And I guess I'm curious about that production technique and that choice around this time. Was that a deliberate choice? Was that something that was happening, because of the way you mixed it? What can you give us a little sense of the sidechain? Yeah.
Sidechaining is when one instrument or input is affecting another instrument or input. This is most often associated with volume, while it could be another parameter. So EDM music, it happens in EDM music all the time. Maybe you want that kick drum to really hit hard. And so what will happen is another instrument will duck out of the way to give space for that kick, that big bottom. You get that kind of whoop, whoop, whoop kind of sound, which, adds energy, adds groove to the music.
Well, it's not actually sidechaining.
It's not sidechaining.
No. What you have is a synth part that's actually just playing around the kick.
Really?
So it's an illusion of that without actually doing that. And the mix is hyper compressed. So it's compressed sounding, but it's not sidechained.
So it's just like compression on the master bus, and when the kick is squashing the mix so hard that the whole thing kind of naturally ducks underneath the kick.
I think that's a fair way of characterizing it.
Yeah. Okay. Let's hear this. Cool. Okay. And then tell us about the synths, like those bright synths on the chorus that are just so huge and present that give it that kind of rage sound. What's going on there?
It's really hard for me to keep track of. I'd almost have to open up the session to tell you like what it is.
Yeah.
I'm 4 albums deep with M83 now, and this was the beginning of that relationship. And so we're always cycling things in and out.
Yeah.
And so, when there's a piece of gear or whatever, we'll pull something up, and if it's inspiring, we'll capture it and then move on. I don't recall what that was that did that, but I remember we really wanted to make something sound not guitaristic, but at least have the harmonic impact of a guitar. You know what I mean? Like that harsh brightness. And in fact, the whole album is very deliberately pretty bright, like overly bright and saturated, and always with everything slightly distorted.
Mm-hmm.
That was a move that we chose to do.
It feels like a 90s grunge mix when that chorus hits with these bright synths. They may as well be distorted electric guitar from a Alanis Morissette record or a Rage record, split left and right when that chorus hits. Those synths are doing the same job as a distorted guitar in that chorus.
That's awesome.
I love the way that sounds.
Well, Anthony is a synth master. He's really exceptional at having a sound in his mind and then making it happen in the real world. And this is when I was kind of becoming a hopeful synth master. This is my first foray into really, really diving into that. And I made this record right on the heels of finishing my work with Nine Inch Nails, and Trent gave me a lot of like really good advice on synthesis and taught me a lot of basic principles that I then parlayed into my production experience. So that was kind of how that worked in terms of timeline. And then I've, tried to keep learning as time has gone on since then.
We got to get into Nine Inch Nails. I feel like we'll make our way back here, but since that happened first chronologically, let's go to Nine Inch Nails. So you hooked up with Trent, what, in the early 2000s?
No. Spring of 2008.
Okay.
Yeah.
How'd that come about?
His management knew me and hooked us up to meet.
Because they were looking for a bass player?
Yeah, okay. Yeah. And I had just finished a long run with Beck, capping off the tour of the album The Information. And I think the last thing we did was this crazy tour in South America, playing stadiums, opening for the Police, who had reunited for that time.
God.
Remember when they did their whole reunion thing, which was insane.
Fuck.
And by the way, Nigel Godrich was playing keyboards with us on that tour.
Oh my God.
So we had the best time and did that, and then that was kind of the end. That was in 2006.
South America.
Yeah.
Playing stadiums with Beck, opening for the Police.
Yeah, it was nuts. It was the best time. I didn't know what I was going to do next. I'd started producing bands like around LA. My first production.
Did Beck say that he wanted to take a break after that? So you guys just kind of disbanded,
Yeah,
or what?
yeah.
Okay, because you'd been going album tour
that's right.
for a while.
Yeah, and so he was off going to start another record, which became that album Modern Guilt, I think, next.
Were you not on that?
No,
Okay.
I wasn't. And then because I was really intensely busy with Nine Inch Nails for a couple of years.
Gotcha.
So anyway, 2008, Trent auditioned me with the rest of the band. Their bass player that
Were
they
you
had
a
lined
huge
up.
fan at this point
Yeah,
of Nine
of
Inch
course,
Nails?
of course,
Yeah.
of course.
Yeah, so this is a huge deal for you.
It was a huge deal for me,
Yeah.
and I was terrified. I was
Did
terrified.
he want an electric player as opposed to a synth player?
He always had an electric bass player,
okay.
but the electric bass player in Nine Inch Nails was always like a multi-hat dude.
Mm-hmm.
It was always synths, guitars, electric bass, and then it expanded to upright bass, all kinds of stuff. I ended up playing like mandolin. Like it was crazy. There's so much to do.
So you talked to Trent on the phone first?
Yeah, and then we met, and then I went for an audition.
When you met, was it coffee? Well, how'd you meet?
I went over to his house. We
Okay,
just
and you
talked about what his needs were,
And you just hung?
Yeah.
And then what did you have to learn for the audition? What'd you play?
I don't remember. 2 or 3 classic Nail songs.
Okay. With the whole band?
Yeah, with everyone that had already been established in Nine Inch Nails previously. Like Robin Fink on guitar, Josh Freese was playing drums.
Cool.
Alessandro Cortini, amazing, playing like synths and guitars, and I think that was it. And then Trent. So yeah, it was terrifying. Biggest challenge of my career, bar none. And
The audition was the biggest challenge of your career, or the whole gig?
the whole gig. I mean, I think I
Why?
had
What was
80,
challenging?
80 songs.
Just knowing all of that material.
Yeah, 80 songs, so many instruments. The gear and the setup to make that happen was just a massive undertaking.
And those sounds are so meticulous.
They're meticulous.
So specific and
Yeah.
crafted. And
Yeah.
to nail that, I'm sure, like, if you tweak one thing that's off, like, you want to get that sound.
So what's your approach? You do the audition, and then they go, okay, you got the gig. Now you have this massive undertaking ahead of you.
Wait. Before we even get
Yes.
there, one question about going to the gig. So at this point, you've been playing with Beck for 10 years or something, right?
Longer, like 15.
15 years.
Yeah.
So when you meet Trent frickin' Reznor, is that a moment where are you nervous? Were you starstruck? You were.
All of it.
So you were trying to stay cool, like meeting Trent, or like
Of
what?
course.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, like I can't, wrap it up any other way. That was definitely the case for me. I was, intimidated, nervous, like starstruck, the whole deal. But then, it's very disarming when he's like extremely personable, extremely intelligent, extremely conversational and cool. And then you learn he has this incredible sense of humor that just pervades everything as well. And, and we've been friends ever since, and he's just this exceptional human.
Wow.
But musically speaking and technically speaking, it was the biggest undertaking of my life, for sure.
Did they audition anyone else?
I don't think so.
I was like, you're probably the guy. Come play. Well, let's just play and make sure.
I don't actually know the machinations behind it, but I
Okay.
think that was the case. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I had to then it was like, okay, here's the repertoire. All those albums, whatever, 80 plus songs.
Did they
And
call songs? Like, why did you not have to learn just the songs you were about to play on tour? Why did you need to learn all 80?
the set list changed all the time.
It did. Okay.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
So Trent wanted the flexibility to be able to change the set list whenever.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
How many songs a night?
28
And how long would you have to know what you were playing that evening?
sound check.
Wow.
Jesus.
But not everything would change. Only a handful of things would change.
Right.
But I need to explain this to you guys. This is kind of interesting. I hate to digress too much, but I'll make it as quick as I can. So after getting the gig, the vibe was every day. Well, I remember starting out with a block of material, maybe 10, 12 songs if memory serves. And then every day at the end of the night, he would assign like 4 more for the next day. So we'd be rehearsing 8 to 10 hours.
Yeah.
And then I'd go home.
And learn.
Yeah. And that was weeks.
Was
It
it,
was wild.
Those are long days.
Yeah.
what
It was
were
wild.
your
But guess who the first person in the room was every morning?
Him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So
guess who
he's
the last person to leave was every day?
hardest working man in showbiz.
100%.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
So was it like, what was your mental state? Were you just like having the time of your life and busting your ass? Or were you just anxious and barely holding on and worried about like, am I doing a good job?
It's such a combination of both of those things. It feels like you're being pulled both ways.
Right.
Very much.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, but then I started to realize the import and the scale of what we're doing, because then we were like, okay, we're moving to the soundstage. And then I see Trent in action on the visual side, and I see him working with this production company doing like this laser range finding 3D screen stuff that was way on the bleeding edge for 2008 and cost a fortune to get together. And he's in there and we're still putting songs together and he's running the production at the same time.
It's insane to be
It's
able to
incredible.
have the flexibility with like normally when you get to that level and there's all these things working in synchronicity, you can't really change songs out because everything's timed and aligned and there's lights and production. How is he able to keep the flexibility in the set list with that big of a production?
every song had its own set piece,
Gotcha.
and it was just modular.
Wow.
And the thing that was remarkable about the particular tour that I got to be a part of was that he had just released an album, 2 albums prior, called Ghosts 1 through 4, which was him doing imaginary sort of film score music to non-existent films. And it was all instrumental. And it was all very ornate instrumental stuff. And we would, in the middle of this huge rock show with a giant pit and like 25,000 screaming people,
Yeah.
the whole set would change. And all of a sudden he's playing an orchestral marimba and I'm playing upright bass, and Josh Freese is playing like a found sound version of a drum kit. And there's nylon string and there's, banjo, and there's like, it was crazy. And the pit would just stop. And all these people would just be sort of like forced to get their minds into this mode of like, oh, now he's doing like chamber music.
Speaking of flexibility, was this some gigs you show up and you play and you, like Ben Folds gigs, he wants you to play and add new things and try shit, and he wants you to do it different every night, and you're almost improvising, and you're like growing this thing together, and it very much is about that particular ensemble and how it sounds. How much of your parts were you executing and learning exactly? Were you adding your own flair, your own flavor? When you played at the audition, were you trying to do exactly what was on the record, or were you adding your own voice and style? And what did he want? Like, what was the balance of flexibility versus executing pre-existing parts?
The audition was very much like, I wanted to be verbatim, right?
Yeah.
And really nail it. So that's an audition. But then over time, I started to realize, like, if he trusts you as a musician, you can embellish upon what's there to a degree. There became moments where things would slightly diverge, but it's hard because we're doing a production. It's a production. It's not like...
Are there tracks?
Sometimes.
Okay.
Yeah, sometimes not. Sometimes nothing.
Yeah.
Sometimes there was a guy who'd kick in a song manually, and we'd play to certain elements, but not as much as you would
Was there a
think. Once
click when
again.
there was no tracks?
I don't think so.
Okay.
And we got here because you were saying he taught you some things about synths and
Yeah.
sound design and synthesis.
He did.
That you then applied to the M83 record. What were some of the things that you learned from Trent about synthesis and sound design?
The way he was able to help me was he helped me build like my first modular synth setup, and he's very savvy in that world. And the thing that I learned rapidly is that stuff's it's actually educational. Like, it's not as daunting as people think. The way to learn synthesis is actually to use the building blocks of synthesis to make sound. And you don't learn it with a keyboard that has menus and a million. You learn it by patching things, and it's actually really fundamental. And that's how music synthesis used to be taught in college and stuff. It used to be on EMS Synthes and ARP 2600s and Korg MS-20s, and those were the learning tools in the 70s and beyond. So Trent took the opportunity and was gracious with the time and like helped me build a rig and taught me how to do certain things. And then that rig became one of the foundations for the M83 sound for that album that I produced the next year.
And so that rig that we're hearing in the M83 track, one of those is this synth that Trent helped you design and build.
Don't know if that's it. I'm just saying that when I made that album, that it became like the way that I was like, I'm going to translate this to like, how do we, make an M83 album?
Yep.
So you did that for how many years? 9 Inch Nails?
2.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
Brief but intense.
and then you left, or how did it happen?
He disbanded the band, actually.
And then he started doing more movie stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's when he started his film composing career. He eventually restarted Nine Inch Nails like 3 or 4 years later.
What year was The Social Network?
It was right around there, 11 or 12.
So was that kind of the movie that he left to...
That was the big one, I think. That was the first time I thought of
Yeah.
Trent as a film
I
composer.
feel like
and
that was his arrival.
what a
on the...
freaking legit
Oh
record
my
to come out
God.
with. I listen to that record
It's
probably
so
like
heavy.
4 times a month.
That's so good.
I love that record.
It's profound. Man.
Isn't
It's
it
really
cool
great.
that, I mean, he and Johnny Greenwood have just become
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
that's like the new, they're like the new Hans Zimmer and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
John Williams. Pretty
Both
cool.
such
They really
musical
are.
Yeah.
motherfuckers.
Yeah.
It was 2010. Yeah, that's when.
So
Okay.
it was 2010.
Yeah.
So
It was the first thing he did after disbanding Nails at that era. Yeah.
And then so you get home, and do you have like you get home from Nine Inch Nails, where all these M83? Did you have like a long line of people that wanted you to produce, or how did the M83 thing come about?
So on tour with Nails, that was a time in my life when I'd fallen in love with M83,
Okay.
their previous releases. And I decided that when I was going to get home, just by force of will, I would try an earnest period of time where I was just producing and I'd give it a shot.
Were you sick of touring?
I don't know if I was sick of touring. No, I just thought maybe I could add this to the quiver.
Okay.
You know? And so I reached out to them. I reached out to Anthony, Anthony Gonzalez, and I said, I'd like to produce your next album.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Who does that?
I don't know.
And
So
did
you
you have
didn't
production?
know them? Yeah,
did you
you
have
did
production credits?
Two records.
You had already produced 2 records.
Which
Yeah.
records?
This really great LA singer-songwriter named Holly Palmer.
Oh yeah.
And she and I had Lyle and Joey and me record a live album at Conway Studios in Hollywood.
Okay.
We all played together.
Yeah.
And so I produced that one, and then I produced this really good LA band called Division Day.
Okay.
Actually, they're from the Bay originally. So those 2 albums, that's all I had.
And then you
2
just
indie things.
Cold call. How did you find his contact?
Email, I don't know. I don't even remember.
Emailed him and said,
I said, I love your band. I'd love to work with you. I think I could produce your next album. Like it was very presumptuous.
"Yeah, what did he say?"
He was like, it's funny, I'm thinking about moving to LA, at least for a time. So we met on tour. They were playing the same festival as us in the UK, and we met at a rock festival. And I brought them on stage, and they watched Nails, and I watched M83, and we just immediately hit it off.
So you were still touring,
Yeah.
when you reached out and said, "I
Yeah,
want to produce
that's
you."
right, that's
and then you
right.
guys hit it off.
Yeah, and then he was
Okay.
like, okay, I'm moving to LA. Let's
yeah.
build a studio in my new spot.
And you built a studio with them?
Yeah, he and I put some gear together, and it wasn't fancy. He came to LA, and this is now like the very top of 2010.
Mm-hmm.
And he had this concept for a record and what it would be like, and it started out very conceptual, and I ended up writing the album with him as well as producing and playing on it. And yeah, that's how it began.
So oftentimes, we can listen to a song and just know exactly how it was made and how we would recreate it. There's a lot of shit happening that sounds very current and very now, but also like has draws on influences. But like the drum, like I have so many questions. Let's start here. How did the song start? Like, how did it come to you? Was this like an acoustic guitar?
Because you co-wrote this with them, right?
I did, yeah.
Yeah.
It was one of the last songs on the record.
Okay.
And Anthony had 4 chords, and it was a lark. It was like something to do for fun almost. It was like this song, this is kind of cool. What if we mess around with this? And the backbone of the song is the sort of like an M83 not trademark, but hallmark, which is the Roland 707 drum machine.
Yeah.
And that kick and snare is just like so M83, whatever. And it's on every record and will always be. So
Are there no real drums on that?
hi-hats.
The hi-hats are real.
That's it.
Okay.
And
Which
and
don't-
a bunch of percussion.
Gotcha.
There's like a go-go and cowbell and kabasa and like a bunch of stuff I played and a couple other people. Joey Warker played percussion on it.
Gotcha.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and so there's percussion happening, and so there's we wanted to really honor the idea of like a hybrid of organic and non-organic.
And is this Pro Tools tape? What's going on here?
No, it's the album started in Ableton Live and then
Yeah.
moved over to Pro Tools.
Yeah. Something about it.
You knew it was Ableton.
Well, because it's that scene. It's the French, like, electronic kind of scene. I don't know. That just made me think it was Ableton.
Okay,
Did,
so-
and did Anthony start with chorus? Does he come up and say, okay, it's
Yeah, it had a few iterations, but it basically started with that as a songwriting kind of organic thing.
like kind of a keys and voice sort of thing?
Yeah, but the voice came later. There's again several iterations of vocals, but the whole idea of the chorus being non-lyrical
Yeah.
and being just this motif, it was something he designed in Ableton Live from vocal sounds
Yes.
that he would
Vocal
sing.
samples.
He sang vocal sounds,
Yeah.
made them samples, and
Yeah.
then treated them a certain way, and it became a fucking thing. Who knew?
So
I
he
don't know.
did that.
He did that. I had very little to do with that particular thing. I think I just dressed up the sound a little bit, and then we were off to the races. We were like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if we had this kind of pop song that had a non-vocal chorus that's just like a motif and that was it.
How long does it take start to finish the song?
The album took a long time, but this album was That particular song was the shortest process.
Can you walk us through like step by step, recreate the process from start to finish of like the recording? What came first?
Not really. I think it was just chords, and then like, okay, 707 underneath, right? Cool. And
So
now
you recorded the chords, and you had like a loop.
he had all that cracking, and then I was like, let's get the DX100. It's a famous Yamaha DX that's like the DX7 but small, and it has a voice thing that you can do with it. So it's like the sound of a lot of like Roger and Zapp and Larry Troutman kind of like funk stuff.
And is that's this?
So
That's such a great sound.
it's just like that cardboardy, fun.
Does it
bouncy
have
stuff.
any like outboard shit on it, or is it just the synth? That's that
There's
particular
probably
sound.
chorus because I put chorus on everything.
Yeah. So chords and then drums.
I think that was I think that's the
Was there
way
scratch
to me.
in it at this point? Was the vocal already there, or vocal came?
An iteration. I have all kinds of versions of the song that have like different vocals and different like we're just fucking around, like trying different stuff. And then the other thing was like, okay, we want the outro to be like this celebratory, massive experience or whatever.
Yeah.
So I came up with this guitar line that you hear. These like double stops that go. Can I have that guitar? I can show you.
Yeah.
Okay. Just a simple melody in the outro,
Yeah.
right? So that became a thing. And then I had my friend James King from the band Fits and the Tantrums. He came in and played a sax solo for us, which is a comp between 3 takes. And he caught that melody with his ear. And you hear him, and then you hear him in the end grabbing it.
That's a cool sax solo. There's the moment where he kind of goes outside and comes back in a little bit.
Can we hear you?
Cool.
I want to hear your guitar melody for 1 second in the outro. Here we go. So wait, question about the mixing, because the mix, it's obviously like an enormous wall of sound, huge, crunchy, saturated mix.
Yeah, very much.
Does that happen in the box? Does it get sent to mix afterwards? Is Anthony doing it all himself in Ableton? Like, what is the mixing process?
This got sent over to Pro Tools eventually, and then I was doing different treatments and stuff. So the pre-mix versions of the song kind of sound like this, but it really got that extra 20% when we went to Sound Factory in Hollywood and had my friend Tony Hoffer mix the album with us. And he is a guy that I kind of came up with around LA, and I brought him in for Midnight Vultures. He's one of the 2 producers on Midnight Vultures. And so I roped him into M83, and we spent 2 weeks with him at Sound Factory, and we set up a rig in the live room that wasn't being used, and we were doing like all the different incidental pieces, like little vignettes and transition pieces that you hear on the Hurry Up We're Dreaming album, and finishing those and then feeding them to him to mix in the control room. And it's a console mix. It's nothing in the box. It's a full console, like an old school mix.
So this is a full console mix, old school mix with all outboard gear and
and it's to such an extent that in the years since the album, we've had requests to have stems, and there were no stems. So it can't be recreated ever. It was all outboard and console.
wow.
Super organic.
A lot of people, when you try to make 80s sounding music now, will use similar sounds.
Here we go. This is true right here.
But they'll quantize the
and
shit
they'll
out of it.
quantize, and it doesn't
time.
sound like the 80s because that's not what they did. The reason that all that shit sounds like it does and it was cool is because people were playing it.
They were.
Yeah.
More than you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, anyway.
I want to ask about Team America. You played on the soundtrack.
I did.
How did this come about?
One of the people involved, I guess you'd call him, I don't know if he's like the music supervisor or the executive producer or the producer. Buddy of mine named George Akulius. George is a really cool record maker.
Okay.
He came up with Rick Rubin and stuff, and he's like a really rad dude that a lot of people know and love in LA. And George pulled me in, and he put a band together. He was like, this needs to be like a band thing, playing all these songs. And it was me and a guitarist from the Vandals.
Are we talking about Warren Fitzgerald, the guitar player?
Thank you.
Oh, nice.
Warren was the guitar player. So great. Brooks Wackerman on drums from Bad Religion and a couple other
Is
bands.
he related to Chad?
He is. He's Chad's younger brother.
Oh my god.
And that was the band. And then Matt and Trey and
Did they play?
Well, they had all the vocals
Okay,
done
yeah.
in advance.
Gotcha. So
And
you
we were
played to
playing
their vocals.
to like the demos. Yeah, it was illegal amounts of fun.
And you came in without the context of having seen the
context.
movie. And what was that like? You're just like, what the fuck are these songs? What was your reaction?
It's almost like old school musicals
Uh-huh.
meets the most profane version of like the South Park mentality.
Yeah.
And really musical, really well constructed.
Yeah.
You know, they had a writer write the stuff with them.
Uh-huh.
And like a proper legit composer type person.
What type
Was
of
experienced in that.
studio were you in, and how was the band recording the songs? Was it like a small band, or were all the extra folks in the room as well? Any strings and extra percussion?
No, it's just a small band.
So just the tracking band is in the
tracking
room,
band, yeah.
like in a room like this, like
Yeah, in fact, it was Record Plant Los Angeles.
in so the sister recording studio of the studio we're in right now.
And
in LA.
not to picture. You didn't have any pictures.
Yes,
to
they had
picture.
picture.
You did have picture.
That's what made the session so insane.
Okay.
So you're sitting there or standing. You're standing there. You're looking at monitors.
Yeah.
And Team America World Police is playing on the monitors, and you're playing live to sync up with the video, and you're seeing fucking puppets.
Fucking puppets, all of it, the whole nine. I'm so Ronry. The French stuff.
Ronry, dude.
The whole thing.
My god.
It was insane. And just think about it. Like,
the French stuff.
it's the French stuff's bonkers.
I gotta go back and watch this movie again.
Same.
Yeah.
So the band is together, like in a circle again, or are you?
It's a typical recording session. There was nothing unique about it. It was like drums in the middle, bass on the side, amps in closets, and let's go.
Had you met Matt and Trey before this?
Yeah.
Okay.
How did you meet them?
They were Beck fans, and I met them at a K-Rock radio show at the Universal Amphitheater, which then became the Gibson Amphitheater, whatever. It's this venue in LA, and I can't remember if it was Matt or Trey, but one of them was like, "I want you to give me bass lessons," or whatever. We kind of laughed about it, and then nothing. And then years later, it was like, "Oh, we're doing this movie."
Amazing.
And
How long did it take?
4 days, I think.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it was quick.
Crazy how quick those things are.
They are quick. Yeah. We're just reading charts and making notes and changing on the fly and getting it down. But the problem is it got slowed down because we're all like laughing so much. So, it was hysterical. It was insane.
Man, you gotten to do some fun shit.
Yeah, that was maybe one of the high points for sure.
I'm surprised you were able to keep it together enough to actually execute the parts. I'm not sure I would have been able to do that.
The sex scene was
Was it the extended sex scene where he's peeing on her?
all of it.
Okay.
But the thing is that there's 3 versions of the sex scene. There's the one that's in the film. Then there's the extended one on the DVD.
Yeah.
And then there's an extended. Yeah.
And you had to score that one too?
Well, that's what everything came from. That's the master tape.
Oh my god.
It was
I want to
brutal.
watch just a documentary about the recording of all that.
You'd
that
just see a
music.
bunch of guys crying, doubled over, like
Yeah.
faces red. That's all you'd see, It was anyway. I don't know.
fun.
I'll take it to the grave. I'm happy.
What was their approach? What were Matt and Trey like in the studio, like while they were
I think they only came by once. They weren't actually that involved in the studio. They had worked on the original demos and compositions and stuff, and then they were sort of in the mode of like, we have to finish this movie.
And who was producing the sessions then?
George Draculius.
Okay.
Yeah.
We've got the kind of broad spectrum of the life of JMJ.
Okay.
Yeah. Beck, Nine Inch Nails, movie stuff. So I'm sure there's a gajillion other things that we're missing. But touring, bands touring, a lot of production now.
Yeah.
Who is the next band that you'd like to email and ask to produce for?
I haven't really thought of that. I'm sort of backing away from production right now because I'm playing live with St. Vincent now. So I'm touring
That's
with
right.
We didn't get into St. Vincent.
We didn't even talk about St. Vincent.
So I'm really enjoying, frankly, not being in the studio.
Okay. That's a crushing band.
It's cool. And thankfully, it all came together really well, like kind of pandemic times.
Yeah.
And
You guys
Annie,
did SNL.
we did SNL. It was the first thing we did, in fact.
Yeah.
which is crazy.
I saw that. Who's playing in that band?
Well, I roped in Jason Faulkner on guitar,
Yeah.
who's also in the Beck ensemble,
Right.
in and out for many, many, many years, since Sea Change, in fact.
Uh-huh.
Genius. Mark Julian on drums.
Uh-huh.
And there's, everyone knows him. He's such a beast. And Rachel Eckroth on keys, who's
That's right.
Tim LaFave's wife.
Yeah.
And they make music together, and Rachel has solo records of her own and whatever. And yeah, she had the time to figure out to do this as well. And also, there was a gig that I wasn't available for, and I got to have Tim sub for me, which
Nice.
was really cool.
Is that the whole band?
Yeah, and then 3 singers.
Who's singing?
So you got Niana Hawley,
Okay.
who's her father is like also kind of a famous singer, and Danielle Withers.
Oh yeah.
And do you know her?
Yeah.
And then Steffi Alexander.
Okay.
Steffi Alexander, who I kind of know from the Macy Gray camp back in the day.
Okay.
She's really great. And the 3 of them are just
Did you do stuff with Macy Gray?
I wrote a couple songs with her back in the day. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Those are some wild sessions.
Huh.
What's a song that you've been listening to recently that you absolutely love?
I'll use the one that I showed you last night, the new Kendrick Lamar song.
I come from a generation of pain will murder his minor. Rebellious and more jealous, a trip you for designer.
That song is incredible.
Dude, did you see the video?
No, with all the deepfake stuff?
Yes.
No, I didn't see it. Really?
I mean, yes.
He's so good.
I to absorb the video and the song at the same time, it took me over for like a good half hour. I just listened to it over and over and over again, and then like read the words, and then I went on like a deep like Nipsey Hussle dive, and
Wow.
and like it hit me hard. I mean, he's just such an absolute master, such a genius, and he keeps doing it. He just keeps innovating, and everything feels like new and fresh in him and of the moment. So that's my recommendation. New Kendrick. What do you got?
Iggy Pop's album,
Oh, yeah.
which is called New Values.
Uh-huh.
And there's a song in there called I'm Bored.
I'm the chairman of the board. I'm a lengthy monologue.
It's a perfect slice of what makes Iggy Pop such a genius. And I've always just circled around him, but really diving in deep and realizing like there's only one of him. And what it is for me is like the perfect combination of like intellectualism meets dangerous wild animal.
Totally.
No, who's like that?
Yeah.
And he's still like that.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you a band called Sand Circles. It's amazing, electronic-ish, in that it uses samples and old drum machines, but with sort of it's played. It's played on synthesizers and played on drum machines and all done kind of live sounding.
Yeah.
And it's sparse, beautifully crafted.
There we were, and here we are.
It was a lot of stuff.
But yeah, we covered a lot of ground.
Thank
you
you
so much for doing this with us.
I hope it wasn't boring in that like we
I
talked a
wasn't
lot
bored.
about me for a long time.
I mean, that's kind of the point.
All right. Okay.
There's a lot to talk about.
That's why we had you on the show.
Thank you.
If you like what you've seen here, feel free to comment and subscribe. This has been Professional Musicians Reacting.
Thank you. We'll see you next time.
See you next week.